Hello, travelers and monster catchers abound. I'm Stella Ferris, and you have crash landed on the Monster Catchers Journal podcast. Welcome to today's episode, and I do hope you enjoy as I tell you another story of my adventures as a monster catcher. And this story is about a glyph that we call Vine Loom. So, they told us not to go near the wet wither wilds. Not because of ghosts. Not because of monsters, but because the forest there remembers. It remembers who cut it, burned it, left it to rot, and it holds a grudge. We were tracing an energy spike, deep, ancient, floral, with an edge of something bitter. Orabeek's antenna kept twitching. Zena's glyph, Ignazura, refused to step past the tree line. Even the shadows were thicker here. We didn't walk into the forest. The forest closed around us. It was like Luna, who saw the face first. "There's a face in the trees," she said. She wasn't wrong. A massive trunk stood in the center of a clearing, gnarled and covered in moss. But deep in its bark was a face, half slumbering, half smiling, with vines spiraling out from its sides like limbs. Each vine ended in a wide leafy hand, 5-veined and twitching. Then it opened its eyes. They glowed green gold, like dying starlight. It let out a groan that wasn't breath, but wind through time. The vines cracked the earth as they lifted, lashing out at anything nearby. One slammed the ground near me, kicking up roots like sharpnel. It wasn't trying to kill me. It was trying to judge. It had a name. I heard it echoed through my skull. And that name is Vine Loom. "You've been alone, haven't you? For a long time." Another vine swung. I flipped back, sliding into the mud. My fingers found a shard of bark, still warm. "I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to remember you." Suddenly, the vine curled around me, not tight, gentle. It lifted me off the ground, held me in front of the massive face. Its leaf hand brushed my cheek like it was trying to understand what I was. I reached out and pressed my palm against its wooden brow. I see you, Vine Loom." Vine Loom did not hurt me, nor did he put me down. We lingered there together for a spell, suspended in an unspoken understanding. His eyes, carved from the deep bark of an age older than memory, met mine, fleshy, human, fragile. And yet, in that moment, I did not feel fragile. I felt seen, as though the vastness of Nibiru itself had chosen to look through him and peer into me. I hadn't come here to catch him. The very thought of that would be heresy. It is against the monster catcher's code to even consider trapping the Ancient Tree of Valor. The being of the elders call Vine Loom. To do so would be a spit upon the soil that birthed us, to tear down the very roots that hold the world upright. No one truly knows how long he has stood guard in these groves, but every whispered tale claims he predates the rise of our kind. Some say his roots touch the heart of Nibiru itself. Others whisper that he was once night, transformed into bark and vine as punishment or blessing, depending on who tells the truth or story. But as his gaze pressed into mine, I felt questions form on my tongue, questions I did not dare to ask. What had he seen across the ages? What wars, what songs, what dying breath of civilization long buried beneath the moss? His silence was heavier than thunder, but it was not unkind. It was the silence of a guardian, a protector who did not need words to command respect. The longer I stayed, the more I realized how small I was in his presence. My boots pressed into the loom, and I felt the faint terror of his roots shifting beneath the earth, reminding me that I stood, not above him, but within him, in the very body of his dominion. Catchers who break the code speak of power, trophies, glory, but in the presence of Vine Loom, such ambitions wither into dust. I did not raise my net. I did not reach for my glyph stone. To do so would be a betrayal, not just of the code, but of something deeper, something sacred. Instead, I bowed my head, letting the silence stretch between us. When at last I lifted my eyes, I saw him blink. A slow groan shift of the wood upon wood, and I knew he had allowed me to leave. And so I did. I walked back through the grove, my heart heavy, my mind burning with the weight of that wordless encounter. For the rest of my life I will carry the memory of those bark-edged eyes, and the truth they impressed upon me. Not all monsters are meant to be caught. Some are meant to be remembered. Some are meant to be revered. I could still feel the weight of his eyes, even as I turned my back to the grove. Each step away from him was like trying to walk against a current, as though the roots themselves were reluctant to let me go. There was no anger in it, only an echo of sorrow, an ancient sadness that clung to the air like morning fog. I didn't dare speak while I was there, but once I crossed the boundary of the clearing, words finally crept back into me. They spilled out in a whisper I hadn't meant to release. You are not meant to be caught. You are meant to be honored. The wind shifted at that moment, carrying the scent of old rain and cedar, and I wondered if Vine Loom had heard me, or if he even needed to. The code tells us not to bind the Tree of Valor, but it says little of what to do once you find him. I had expected fear or awe, maybe even temptation instead. What filled me was something stranger, reverence, yes, but tangled with guilt, as though simply standing before him had revealed every flaw I carried in myself. My impatience, my pride, my reckless hunger to prove I was more than a child with a net and a name. He saw all of it, and still he let me leave. I reached the edge of the grove and looked back only once. He hadn't moved, not in the way mortals would notice, yet the branches overhead, swayed through the air, was still, and for the briefest of moments I thought I saw faces in the knots of his bark, faces of those who had stood before him long ago. Some looked weary, some looked proud, all seemed bound to him, part of his endless vigil. I do not know what story Vine Loom carries, nor if it will ever be told in full, but as I walked back toward the sanctuary, I knew one thing for certain. This encounter was no mere accident. Nibiru had placed me in his path for a reason. The question that remains is, why? I had to tell Professor Orion about my encounter. Keeping something like this to myself would have been a betrayal of the code. Plus, the way he acted after the last encounter that I had, and I didn't tell him, was a pretty bad reaction, so telling him was the perfect thing to do. So, my legs carried me faster than my thoughts, straight toward the Luan Academy. The campus sprawled along the cliffs overlooking the misted valleys of Nibiru, its tall spires etched with glyphs that pulsed faintly against the evening sky. The run felt endless. My breath came sharp and ragged, and the forest path seemed to lean in on me with every step, branches whispering as though Vine Loom's presence still lingered behind me. His eyes, those spark-carved, sorrowful eyes, were imprinted in my mind, following me no matter how quickly I moved. By the time I reached the great bronze doors of the academy, the lanterns had already been lit. Students in slate blue coats drifted across the courtyards, carrying stacks of glyph scrolls and speaking in hushed tones. Some paused to look at me, their conversations faltering. When they caught sight of the dirt on my boots and the panic written across my face, I ignored their stares. The Luan Academy was more than a school. It was a sanctum of monster lore, a repository of all the whispered truths Nibiru had yet to surrender. Its vaulted halls smelled of ink, candle wax, and the faint metallic tang of binding glyphs. The walls bore paintings of past catchers, standing beside creatures I could scarcely imagine meeting, let alone recording. Every time I set foot in this place, I felt like a child standing among giants. But this was different. Tonight, I wasn't just another student or field catcher reporting her findings. Tonight, I carried something heavier, something older, and I knew Professor Orion was the only one who could help me to carry it. Professor! I burst into the chamber, nearly out of breath, chest heaving as though I'd run the length of Nibiru itself. My lungs burned, my throat was raw, and the words clawed their way out of me in a ragged gasp. Orion's study was dim, but alive with light. Candles gathered in wrought iron sconces, their flames casting wavering shadows over the star maps spread across his white oak table. He had been tracing them again, charting constellations with his endless patience, mapping the heavens as if the answer to every riddle of this world could be found written in the stars. For once he looked up from them, his brows knitted together, his deep-set eyes narrowing as he studied my face. Stella Ferris, his voice was low, but edged with concern. Are you all right, Quasar? The name struck me like it always did, heavy with weight and history. He only called me that when the matter was dire, when the girl before him was not just his student, but something more. Something bound by the old lineages. I shook my head, swallowed again, the dryness in my throat. I saw him, I managed at last, every word dragging itself free from like stone pulled through mud. Orion stilled his hands, which had been resting lightly on the star map, curled his fist, smudging ink across the parchment. He leaned forward, and the candlelight carved hollows in his face. Saw who? The question was soft, but there was iron beneath it. The one, I whispered. The one you said we must never meet. The one you warned me about. My voice cracked, a tremor threading through the words I had sworn I'd never speak. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood so suddenly and sharp, the air itself seemed to flinch. Tell me you didn't. His tone was clipped, but beneath it trembled something I had rarely heard from him, fear. I closed my eyes, the image flooding back unbidden. Relentless, towering bark, ancient limbs, eyes that hollowed me out to the core. I met Vine Loom. The silence that followed was suffocating. The academy walls groaned faintly as though even the stones recoiled from the name. Orion's breath caught, and for a long moment he didn't speak. His gaze darted to the shelves that lined his chamber. Rows of tomes bound in leather, scrolls sealed in wax, glyphstones locked in iron cages. Some of those relics pulsed faintly, as if awakened by the mention of the forbidden name. You should not have gone there, he said at last, his voice low and strained. You should not have even sought the grove. I didn't. I shot back, though my voice was weaker than I intended. I didn't speak to him, Professor. He found me. He looked at me. He didn't harm me, but my throat tightened. I can't get his eyes out of my head. They were hollow. Hollow, but alive. Bark and sorrow all at once. Orion's hands trembled ever so slightly. He pressed them flat against the table to steady himself, his rings glinting in the candlelight. Hollow bark eyes, he repeated, as though testing the words, weighing them against 100 old stories. He saw you then, truly saw you. I nodded, though I could barely meet his gaze. My heart still raced from more than the run. I felt small. Not the way a child feels small, but the way a spark feels against the endless dark. I don't think I breathed until he let me go. He could have crushed me, rooted me where I stood, swallowed me in the earth, but he didn't. Which means, Orion murmured, more to himself than me, that he chose restraint. He began to pace, his robes whispering against the hard floor. Every few steps he would pause, glanced towards the window where the night sky stretched vast and unyielding, then turned back again, his brows furrowed deeper with each pass. I could feel the storm of thoughts inside him. Calculations, old lessons, legends he had prayed would remain just that. Finally, he stopped and looked at me, his eyes, usually calm as a scholar's, burned with the weight of something unspoken. Do you understand what this means, Stella Ferris? You have brushed against a force older than the catcher's code itself. Vine Loom is not merely a guardian of the grove. He is memory, he is oath, he is punishment and mercy woven together. For you to stand before him and walk away unbound. He trod off, shaking his head. This will change things. I swallowed hard, my palm clammy. Change what? Orion didn't answer at first. He crossed to a high shelf, pulled down a tome bound in cracked bark, and set it on the table with a dull thud. Dust curled into the air as he opened it, flipping through brittle pages inked with runes I didn't recognize. His fingers stopped on a passage, trembling slightly as he traced the lines. The last written account of Vine Loom was 3 centuries ago, he said softly. And the catchers who saw him did not live to tell it. Their words were carried back by their glyphs before the bond severed. Since then, no one has claimed to stand in his presence and survived. He looked up at me, his gaze sharp as a blade, until you. The words twisted in my chest, heavy and terrifying. Why me? I whispered. That, Orion said, closing the tome with a shuddering sigh, is the question we must answer, and soon. For if Vine Loom has chosen to reveal himself again, then the age of quiet is ending. His eyes lingered on me, filled with something I couldn't quite name. Fear. Yes, but also a flicker of awe. And you, Quasar, you may be the key to what comes next. For weeks I couldn't escape. Those eyes, they lingered in every corner of my vision. Rising up when I tried to sleep, burning in my thoughts when I tried to eat, hollow, wooden, lifeless, and yet not lifeless at all. They were watching. Sometimes I would catch myself staring at the walls of my sanctuary, convinced that the lines in the stones had twisted into the shape of Vine Loom's gaze. Other times I'd wake in the middle of the night, gasping, certain that the roots had crept beneath my bed, curling up toward me in silence. Why? Why did I keep seeing them? He hadn't touched me. He hadn't spoken. Yet I was tethered to him, as though the encounter had stitched something invisible between us. The answer came a week later. Professor Orion arrived at my pyramid sanctuary just after dawn, his knock sharp, enough to shake me from a restless sleep. I stumbled to the door, hair unkept, eyes sore from the nights without rest. When I opened it, I saw the urgency written plain across his face. His robes were disheveled, ink stains smudged across his sleeves, and he clutched a book so tight it seemed he feared it would vanish. Stella Ferris, he said, not even waiting for me to speak. We must talk now. I ushered him inside. The sanctuary felt colder than that morning, as though it too had been waiting for his words. Orion laid the tome upon the table, its cover cracked and darkened with age, its binding a little more than thread. He flipped it open into the page inked in glyphs. I could barely understand, and his hands trembled as he pointed to the passage. I was right to be afraid, he said, his voice low. Your visions are not madness. They are the mark of an ethereal line, an unbroken tether formed when Vine Loom fixed his gaze upon you. My stomach dropped, my mouth suddenly dry. A tether? Yes. He shut the book with a heavy thud, the sound echoing in the chamber like a warning bell. When you met his eyes, he reached for you, not to destroy, but to bind. Vine Loom has chosen you, Stella Ferris. He's trying to make you his new host. The words carved into me like blades. Host? Orion nodded grimly. Vine Loom has no vessel of his own. For centuries he had drawn strength from the roots of Nibiru, but his essence is not fixed. It seeks form. It seeks flesh without intervention. The line between you will will complete itself in 30 days' time. And when it does, he hesitated, his jaw tightening, you will die. Your body will be hollowed, your soul consumed, and Vine Loom will walk the world in your stead. I staggered back, my hands gripping the edge of the table for support. The room seemed to tilt, shadows stretched along against the stone walls. My pulse thundered in my ears. I had faced monsters before. I had looked into eyes filled with fire, venom, and hunger, but none had ever followed me home. None had ever reached so deeply into me that I could not shake them free. There has to be a way to stop it, I whispered. There is, Orion said, but it's not without risk. You must return to him. You must face Vine Loom again and sever the ethereal line yourself. Speak to him. Demand release. Only then can the tether be broken. If you refuse, he let the words trail off, but his silence spoke louder than anything. I looked towards the tall windows of my sanctuary where sunlight spilled across the floor like broken glass. The thought of going back, of standing once more beneath those towering limbs and staring into those hollow eyes, it sent chills through me, deeper than any winter storm, but I had no choice. 30 days, that was all the time I had before the hollow gaze became my own. So I returned to Vine Loom. This time he was waiting. A malicious smile twisted across his bark-carved face. The air trembled as his roots writhed beneath the soil, reaching for me. I met his hollow eyes without flinching, and I said, I reject you. He did not go down without a fight. The grove shook, branches groaned, roots snapped like whips against the ground. Every step I took forward felt like wading against a storm, but I refused to let his gaze consume me. I, Stella Ferris, reject you, Vine Loom, I shouted, my voice echoing through the grove, shaking the very roots beneath our feet. And at once he finally disappeared out of sight, never returning to the grove again. And that, my friends, is another episode of the Monster Catcher's Journal podcast. I'm really happy that you guys are coming back and listening to my episodes and supporting me. And always, from Nibiru, have a good day. Goodbye.